Welcome to Starbound. My name's the Voice Ogre, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new stories of Sunspire Academy, which I happen to do, and Freyren and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story.
The silence crashed down, heavier than any explosion, thicker than the humid, earthy air of the xenobotany labs. The speaker grill high on the vine-choked wall was dead. The horrifying sounds of heavy weapons fire and shattering transparasteel abruptly cut off, leaving only the persistent drip of unseen water and the frantic drumming of Brock's own heart. Did Kerfix just execute the Dean? The chilling static that had replaced the pirate lord's snarl felt like ice in Brock's veins. He stood tense, silent. Across the dimly lit, overgrown space, the rest of the makeshift team reacted. Fleek let out a soft, distressed whine, his ears pressed flat against his skull. Bjorngir stood rigid near the massive vine-covered blast door Fleek had sealed. The captured pirate rifle held tight across his armored chest. Even Lariel lost a fraction of her cool composure, her brilliant sapphire skin seeming to pale slightly under the eerie, bioluminescent glow of strange fungi clinging to the walls.
Fleek!
Brock's voice was a harsh rasp, cutting through the paralysis.
Status report, now. Floor 100, life signs, power grid, anything.
Fleek scrambled back to the dusty, old-style terminal, half swallowed by pulsating, fleshy vines. He jacked his scavenged interface device into a dusty port. Holographic displays flickered to life, overlaying complex diagnostic readouts onto the 3D schematic map wirelessly fed from Brock's navigator.
Accessing network relays, rerouting through emergency conduits.
He muttered, his usual calm strained.
Trying to ping sensors near the Dean's suite. Negative. It's a total blackout now. Localized around floor 100. No sensor readings transmitting outwards. No life signs. No environmental data.
He tapped furiously, checking adjacent levels.
Heavy interference bleeding down. They must have activated the whaled seed after breaching the office. Or the fighting itself took out the local network relays. Either way, they're jamming near the arrays absolute now. We're blind up there. We have no way of knowing the Dean's status. Or if Kerfix has already begun the atmospheric override sequence.
The implication hung heavy. The situation upstairs had deteriorated significantly since their last glimpse.
He hasn't gotten my authorization, at least.
Coach Feckerden's voice, though strained with pain, cut through the rising panic. He leaned heavily against a thick network of roots, his freshly bandaged arm held close, his face etched with grim certainty.
Grolnak failed, and as long as I am secure down here,
he gestured weakly,
Kerfix can't easily use my specific biometrics or override keys.
He paused, taking a shallow, pained breath.
That buys the Spire some time from at least that critical failure point.
His gaze hardened.
But don't mistake that for safety. Kerfix will still target the secondary atmospheric controls near the array on floor 100 directly. Physical access changes the game. He could brute force those secondary systems given time, especially if the whaled seed is disrupting network integrity. We have to stop him reaching that console.
So the objective's the same, Brock confirmed. The path forward clear despite the unknowns. Get to floor 100, disable the whaled seed, secure the QCOM array, send the signal. He turned to Fleek. Talk to me, Fleek. How tough is this going to be? What are we up against trying to access the array? Fleek looked up from the terminal, pushing his glasses further up his snout, his expression deeply serious.
Extremely tough. The array uses hardened, military-grade protocols. Kerfix will have undoubtedly added his own layers of security. likely code-specific encryption routines I haven't encountered. And the whaled seed.
He shook his head slightly.
It's designed for sabotage. It will have strong defenses, physical locks, energy shielding, maybe even internal counter-intrusion measures. We absolutely need physical access to the console, yes, but even then...
He trailed off, his claws tapping rapidly on his device as he ran calculations based on known Academy security architecture.
Bypassing these defenses quickly enough, standard intrusion techniques, even with my tools, it might take hours against that level of hardening. What we need is something faster, a direct override, something like root system access.
Which we don't have, Brock stated flatly, the implication sinking in. It's too slow.
No.
Fleek agreed, then paused, his gaze flicking thoughtfully towards the schematic navigator Brock held.
Unless...
His ears twitched.
That device, the Dean gave it to you. It contains the only complete schematic, including hidden structural and system data no one else is supposed to have. It feels significant, more than just a map.
He looked at Brock, a new intensity in his eyes.
Maybe it holds more than just layouts. Brock, let me interface it directly with the terminal again, deeper this time. If there are any hidden system identifiers, handshake protocols, or even residual administrative data linked to its core programming, anything I can leverage, it might give us an edge.
An edge is better than nothing. Brock nodded, stepping closer and carefully plugging the intricate handheld device back into a corresponding port on Fleek's interface. The navigator's blue holographic light flared as Fleek initiated a deeper diagnostic scan. Data streams, far more complex than simple map coordinates, began scrolling rapidly across Fleek's display. Intricate code, system architecture diagrams, access logs. Fleek leaned closer, his breath catching, eyes scanning the cascading information. He let out a sharp intake of breath, tapping frantically to isolate data packets.
Wait, this interface, these directories, they're not just read-only map files. Authentication keys, fail-safe overrides, system kernel access protocols.
His head snapped up, eyes wide behind his lenses, staring at Brock with dawning, almost fearful comprehension.
Brock, this device... It's imbued with root authentication sequences for the Spire's primary operating system. Core logic access, high-level security overrides, including the QCOM array and its adjacent systems. It is not linked to the master key. It is the master key.
Fleek practically vibrated with the discovery.
The Dean didn't just give you a map. He gave you the keys to the kingdom. With these root protocols physically plugged into the array console, I can directly challenge Kerfix's logs, target the whaled seed hardware signature by its anomalous system ID, and bypass its defenses. Without it...
He looked back at the screen, then at Brock again, the implication clear.
We'd have no chance.
The navigator felt like pure energy in Brock's hands now. The Spire's master key. The Dean trusted me with this. The weight of that trust, the sheer responsibility, settled heavily onto his shoulders.
That's settled then. We have a chance.
Bjorngir stepped forward, unclipping a compact energy sidearm from the utility belt cinched over his cracked armor plating. He offered it, grip first, to Brock.
I took this off Grolnak before we dropped, the Gord rumbled. Better fit for you than the heavy rifles, Ensign.
Brock accepted the weapon. Solid, balanced, purpose-built. He checked the energy cell, full charge, and slotted it into the back of his waistband. He still hadn't Tol's knife, but now he had options. Thanks, Bjorngir. He received a curt nod in reply. All right, team, Brock said, his voice firmer. New intelligence, same mission. Fleek needs the schematic device at the array console, and that makes it priority 1. I protect it and get it there. Fleek, you're on tech. Array wailed seed the works. L'Ariel. He looked at the Trapian, who met his gaze steadily. Stealth, recon, keep us alive getting there. Bjorngir, you're our heavy hitter. Watch our backs, clear the path, put the fear of God into them if anyone tries anything. They glanced at Feckerden. The coach gave a weak thumbs up.
Go. I'm no use in a fight right now, and a liability if I'm caught. You four get the job done.
Brock nodded. Fleek, they're out. The Porthan brought the map back up, highlighting the path upwards. Vertical maintenance shaft 7 Kappa. Access point deeper in this complex. He indicated the hazardous 0G Arboretum on level 92. Emergence point here. High risk, shortcuts through damaged zones, but it bypasses multiple compromised levels. From there, 8 floors up to the Dean's suite.
Fastest way.
Bjorngir grunted. L'Ariel nodded once, already blending into the shadows. Let's move, Brock ordered, taking point. The navigator held high, its blue light cutting a path through the humid darkness and the silent, watching jungle of alien plants. Fleek's scavenge device whirred, coaxing ancient hydraulics to life. With a groan that echoed up the shaft, the heavy maintenance hatch creaked inwards, scraping against the corroded frame. A gust of cold, stale air, carrying the faint, acrid scent of something decayed, washed over them. Beyond lay darkness, punctuated by the intermittent flicker of distant emergency lights reflecting off unseen surfaces. 8 floors to the Arboretum level, Brock confirmed, shining the navigator's beam upwards into the abyss. Thick cables and conduits lined the shaft like metallic veins. L'Ariel, take point. Watch for surprises. Without a word, L'Ariel flowed into the shaft. She tested each rung with economical grace before ascending, disappearing into the oppressive blackness above. Brock followed, the navigator's light pushing back into the shadows, revealing damp patches of rust, dangling wires, and the occasional scorch mark from some past incident. Fleek scrambled after him, his claws finding purchase on the slick metal. While Bjorngir brought up the rear, his armored bulk a constant, scraping presence in the narrow confines. The climb was a tense vertical crawl through the Spire's forgotten guts. The air grew colder, the metallic tang sharper. Twice they encountered sections where the rungs had rusted away entirely. Bjorngir, bracing his massive frame against the opposite wall, created a living anchor point, allowing Brock and Fleek to carefully traverse the gap using a thick, greasy power cable. Their boots scrabbling for purchase on protruding conduits. L'Ariel seemed to glide across, finding impossible handholds. Higher up, a damaged section of the shaft sparked violently as they passed. Exposed conduits spat angry blue arcs of energy, forcing them to flatten themselves against the ladder, the heat radiating momentarily against their faces. Brock felt the hair on his arms prickle from the static discharge. One wrong move. Further still, a section of the gravity plating above them flickered, its low hum stuttering. For a terrifying second, the artificial pull lessened dramatically. Brock felt his boots lift from the rung, a wave of nausea washing over him as his stomach lurched. Before he could drift, Bjorngir's gauntleted hand clamped onto his shoulder like a vice, slamming him back against the ladder with enough force to rattle his teeth. The plating flickered again, stabilizing with a steady hum.
Careful, Ensign.
The Gord grunted, his voice a low rumble inches from Brock's ear. Thanks, Brock managed, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He forced himself to focus, pushing down the vertigo. Keep climbing. After what felt like hours, but the navigator marked as just under 15 minutes of grueling ascent, L'Ariel's voice echoed softly from above. Level 92 access. Hatch is warped, forced inwards. Significant structural damage nearby. Brock pulled himself up the last few feet, joining her on a narrow, buckled maintenance platform. The circular hatch leading out was horribly bent, its edges blackened and melted in places. Sparks sputtered from the mangled locking mechanism.
Not pirate work.
Lariel observed, touching the warped metal.
Impact explosion from the other side.
Fleek arrived, his device already scanning.
Severe frame damage. Lock mechanism fused. Emergency release is offline. Severed power conduit.
He pointed towards a thick, sparking cable dangling nearby.
I can try splicing into that auxiliary line to trigger the bolts, but the power surge will be uncontrolled. Stand clear.
While Fleek carefully worked on the sparking cable, manipulating frayed wires with delicate tools, Brock and Bungear braced themselves. Lariel flattened herself against the shaft walls. With a final twist from Fleek, the severed cable touched the emergency release contacts. A blinding flash followed a deafening clang, and the warped hatch blew outwards violently, torn from its hinges by the raw power surge. It spun away into the space beyond like a giant metal frisbee. So much for a silent entrance. Cautiously, Brock peered out, sidearm ready. They had emerged into a scene of impossible, breathtaking destruction. The Zero-G Arboretum, once a multi-story testament to xenobotanical wonders, it was now a slow-motion vortex of wreckage. Huge transparisteel shards from shattered biodomes tumbled end over end, reflecting the erratic flashes of dying emergency lights mounted on spinning chunks of catwalk. Entire mammoth trees, ripped free from their containment units, drifted silently, their exotic foliage trailing like ghostly shrouds. Tangled with sparking wires and twisted structural beams, islands of rock and soil, some as large as shuttles, clumped and floated serenely, leaving behind them craters marking where the other plants had been torn away. The air, thin and cold, tasted of burnt plastic and the cloying, sweet rot smell of countless species of decaying alien plants. A profound, vacuum-like silence dominated, emphasizing the sheer scale of the devastation. Fleek sharply drew in a breath through his teeth, adjusting his glasses as he floated out beside Brock, taking in the panorama.
Catastrophic failure. Hostiles.
Lariel whispered, pointing towards a large, drifting island of rock and soil. Figures in charcoal and red armor used it as cover. Before Brock could give an order, an energy bolt lanced from behind a cluster of floating crystalline flowers, sizzling past his head.
Contact!
Bungear roared, unleashing a torrent of cover fire from his heavy rifle back towards the flowers. The force of the blast kicking up glittering crystal dust that drifted lazily in the void. The Arboretum erupted into a three-dimensional firefight. Brock shoved off the platform edge, G-ball instincts taking over as he angled towards a spinning chunk of shattered biodome. He fired the sidearm, suppressing a pirate emerging from behind a floating tree root, the energy bullets kicking up puffs of alien soil. Another pirate, maneuvering with suit thrusters around a piece of twisted catwalk, lined up a shot on Fleek as the Porthan propelled himself towards an active console fragment. Brock snapped off a shot, catching the pirate's thruster pack, sending him tumbling helplessly into a dense cloud of shimmering spores released from a ruptured fungal pod nearby. Bungear anchored himself to a massive girder jutting from a wall fragment, laying down heavy covering fire. Energy bolts slammed into his makeshift cover, showering sparks.
Flankers! Right side!
He bellowed, spotting two pirates using a drifting rock garden for an approach vector. Before he could pivot his heavy rifle, Lariel materialized from the shadow of the rock garden itself. Her knife flashed twice. One pirate recoiled, clutching a severed coolant line spewing freezing mist. The other simply went limp as she struck a precise point at the base of its helmet. She kicked off the second body, vanishing behind a curtain of floating, ribbon-like kelp before the first pirate finished his pained roar.
She moves like water, even here,
Brock thought. Another pirate fired from above, bolts raining down near Fleek. Bungear roared in frustration, unable to bring his rifle to bear quickly enough. Instead, He ripped a refrigerator-sized chunk of artificial rock free from the garden wreckage, and, with a G-ball trained heave, hurled it upwards, the improvised missile smashing into the upper pirate's perch, sending rock fragments and the surprised pirate careening away. The recoil sent Bjorngeir drifting backwards, but he expertly fired a short burst from his rifle in the opposite direction, using the weapon's kick as makeshift propulsion to stabilize himself.
Found something!
Fleek's voice, amplified slightly by the thin atmosphere, but still strained, carried from the spinning console fragment he'd reached. He gestured frantically towards the outer walls.
Local atmospheric controls. Minimal power, but I can trigger a localized defense screen purge. Uses high-pressure gas. It should create obscuration. Do it!
Brock yelled back, the sounds muffled slightly by distance and debris, hoping Fleek heard him over the weapon fire. He ducked behind a drifting bench as energy bolts impacted nearby. With a deep whoomph, vents blasted jets of pressurized gas outwards. Dense white vapor clouds instantly billowed through the zero-G environment, drastically reducing visibility. Shouts of surprise and guttural Gordic echoed through the swirling chaos. "Nice one, Fleek!" Brock shouted into the whiteout, pushing off his cover towards the service tunnel entrance marked on the navigator. Through a thinning patch of the swirling vapor, he saw them. The faculty hostages, herded near the upper exit by 5 Whale-Tree pirates. The pirates seemed momentarily confused by the sudden obscuration, shielded somewhat by a large dome fragment. Bjorngeir saw them too.
Hansen! The hostages now! While they're blind!
He roared, voice resonating powerfully through the vapor, already angling himself for another attack run across the debris field.
No, it's a trap.
Brock desperately scanned the swirling white for L'Oreal, needing her caution, her tactical eye. He couldn't see her. He saw Bjorngeir preparing to charge into the potential kill zone.
God damn it!
"Bjorngeir, no!" Brock yelled, his voice sharp with command.
It's a trap! Diversion! We draw them north!
He saw L'Oreal materialize then, a flicker of blue against the white vapor near him. Her expression was cold, pragmatic.
Leave them,
L'Oreal stated flatly, loud enough for Bjorngeir to hear over the distant weapon fire.
The mission is the array. They are Orion faculty,
Bjorngeir bellowed back, enraged by her callousness.
We do not abandon allies. Enough,
Brock roared, cutting them both off. The pirates wouldn't stay confused forever.
Bjorngeir, with me. Diversion north. Make it loud. L'Oreal.
He locked eyes with the Trapian, making the command clear.
Use the vapor, use the diversion. Get to those hostages and take out their guards. All of them. Give the faculty a chance to escape in the chaos.
He pointed south.
Fleek, get to that tunnel. Now go!
L'Oreal's eyes widened almost imperceptibly at the direct order to engage. But then, a predatory glint flickered within them. She gave a single, sharp nod before melting back into the vapor cloud, heading south toward the hostages. Bjorngeir hesitated only a fraction of a second before letting loose a bellowing war cry and unleashing a torrent of fire towards the northern sector, fully committing to the diversion. They grabbed a huge chunk of rock plating and hurled it crashing into the floating debris near the north access, creating a massive, noisy impact. The ruse worked. Muffled shouts and concentrated energy fire erupted from the north as pirates reacted. Brock joined Bjorngeir, firing his sidearm, yelling tactical nonsense, making their feint look real. He risked a glance south. He saw Fleek, a small figure using his jerry-rigged dry ice thrusters for propulsion, rocketing towards the service tunnel entrance, weaving through the vapor. Further on, near the hostages, Brock caught flashes of movement within the cloud. L'Oreal's lithe form, the glint of Umtol's knife, a sudden, jerky collapse of armored figures. The pirates guarding the hostages were too focused on the northern diversion to notice the phantom in their midst, until it was too late. He saw the faculty scattering, pushing off towards relative safety behind larger debris as their captors fell silently.
She did it. The mad woman actually did it.
Working on the door bypass! Hurry! The Porthan's shout carried back. Closer now. Time to pull back. Bjorngir! Fall back! Towards Fleek! Brock yelled, reversing his own trajectory southwards, laying down the suppressive fire towards the northern pirates who were beginning to realize the deception. Bjorngir unleashed one last bellow and a final volley towards the north, then used a massive piece of wall paneling to ricochet himself backwards with surprising speed, angling towards the southern tunnel. Their combined covering fire brought precious seconds. Brock scanned frantically for L'Ariel. There. She emerged from the vapor cloud near where the hostages had been, but she was exposed. Pirates, recovering from the northern diversion and likely alerted by stray shots or falling bodies near the hostages, were turning towards her. Energy bolts began stitching the space around her, impacting debris, forcing her to weave desperately. Bjorngir! Covering fire! L'Ariel's pinned down! Brock yelled, shifting his own fire, trying to suppress the attackers targeting her escape path. Bjorngir reacted instantly, pivoting mid-drift, laying down a protective wall of heavy energy bolts. His shots were powerful, but the pirates were numerous now, taking cover behind substantial wreckage, their returning fire concentrating on L'Ariel, trapping her in a lethal crossfire. She was fast, using small debris fragments for momentary cover, but she couldn't advance. Door almost open! Fleek shouted from the relative safety of the tunnel entrance, frantically working the panel. He looked back, saw L'Ariel trapped under heavy fire, saw Brock and Bjorngir struggling to suppress the attackers. They're regrouping! Cover fire isn't enough! We need a bigger distraction! Fleek's eyes darted around the chaotic debris field, calculating trajectories. He spotted a large, jagged chunk of cryo-ice, easily the size of a small shuttle engine, drifting near the main cluster of pirates suppressing L'Ariel. An idea sparked. He scrambled, pulling the small, dry ice thruster unit from his own back harness. Working with frantic speed, he slapped magnetic clamps from his kit onto the ice block, securing the thruster unit firmly. He aimed it carefully, overriding the safeties. L'Ariel, move! Brock, Bjorngir, heads up! Fleek roared, pouring power into the thruster. With a violent hiss, the repurposed thruster ignited, sending the massive chunk of cryo-ice spinning and accelerating directly towards the pirates pinning L'Ariel down. It wasn't fast, but it was huge and unexpected, and that was enough. The pirates yelled in alarm, forced to break off their attack and scramble to evade the incoming projectile. L'Ariel seized the moment. As the pirates scattered, she put a final burst of speed, pushing off a smaller rock, dodging tumbling debris and a final wild energy shot, diving headfirst through the shimmering curtain of artificial kelp near the tunnel entrance just as the ice block crashed into the pirate's former position, sending shards of ice and startled yells echoing through the arboretum. Bjorngir arrived a second later, rifle still spitting suppressive fire towards the chaos. Seal it! Brock roared, firing one last burst before throwing himself through the kelp after Bjorngir. Fleek slammed his claw into the emergency closure panel. With a piercing screech and a heavy final thud, the reinforced inner door slammed shut and locked, plunging them into the relative darkness and blessed gravity of the service tunnel just as heavy impacts hammered against the metal from the outside. Silence, broken only by their ragged breathing and the low hum of the tunnel's ventilation. Brock leaned against the cool metal wall, the graze on his thigh throbbing, adrenaline leaving him shaky. Bjorngir slumped slightly, checking the cracked plating on his shoulder. Fleek frantically monitored the door seal readouts on his device. L'Ariel smoothly rose from her dive, pulling a piece of kelp from her striking orange hair, her breathing only slightly faster than normal. Report? Brock managed, pushing himself upright, looking from the shuddering door to L'Ariel. Door sealed. Heavy impacts detected externally. Structural integrity holding. Fleek confirmed, adjusting his glasses. L'Ariel met Brock's gaze, a single curt nod. Hostage squads eliminated, she said, her voice calm again.
Faculty have a chance now.
She glanced back toward the sealed door.
But they know we are in the tunnels. They will pursue.
Then we keep moving, Brock said, checking his sidearm's charge. Relief mingled with the grim reality. They had done what they could. Good work, all of you. Especially you, Fleek. Nice shot. Fleek's ears twitched, almost imperceptibly. The heavy service tunnel door hissed open, revealing not sanctuary, but another layer of hell. The transition from the relative quiet of the tunnel to the immediate vicinity of the dean's office suite was jarring. The air here was thick with the acrid stench of burnt metal, heavy enough to sting the back of Brock's throat. The low hum of the Spire systems was drowned out by the ragged, intermittent blasts of heavy energy weapons discharging nearby, followed by the high-pitched screech of impacted plastisteel. Red emergency lights pulsed erratically, casting the corridor in a bloody, strobing glare, reflecting off shattered viewports and pools of coolant slicking the deck plates. Debris littered the wide, opulent corridor that led to the dean's main office. Chunks of intricate ceiling molding, disabled security drones sparking feebly. The scorched and twisted remains of what might have been decorative statues, and at least 2 crumpled forms in the armor of whaled 3 pirates, sprawled near the entryway. The ornate double doors leading into the suite itself were gone, ripped from their hinges and lying buckled on the floor like discarded metal shells. Beyond the ravaged opening, Brock could see flashes of intense energy fire, hear guttural Gordic shouts, and the defiant, though weakening, hum of a personal energy shield under duress.
Navigator confirms heavy pirate concentration around the suite, sealing the sector.
Fleek reported grimly, pointing to the swarm of red dots on the holographic display that converged on but didn't penetrate the office's immediate location.
But inside, the jamming is absolute. Weld seeds active. No life signs. No sensor data getting out.
Listen, Brock said, straining his ears over the chaos. He gestured toward the breached doorway where flashes of energy fire illuminated the smoke within.
That shield, those impacts. Someone's still holding out in there. It has to be the Dean. He's still fighting.
The realization sent a surge of adrenaline through him.
Then Kerfix is in there with him.
Bjorngir growled, hefting his rifle.
Anne's running out of time,
Lariel added, her gaze fixed on the doorway.
The fighting sounds desperate. Close quarters.
Agreed. Brock nodded, his mind racing. We don't have time for a settled plan. We breach hard and we breach fast. He looked at Lariel. Clear the immediate entryway. Traps, sensors, anything right at the threshold. Give us a clean entry. She nodded once, already a shadow against the damaged wall panels. She flowed forward, hugging the edge of the corridor. Brock watched her pause near the jagged edges of the ruined doorway, her head tilting slightly as she seemed to listen or sense things Brock couldn't perceive. He saw her subtly redirect a sparking, severed data conduit with the tip of her boot, then use a small, specialized tool to disable something embedded in the doorframe itself. Maybe a proximity mine or a backup sensor grid. A faint shimmer near the floor dissipated. She gave a quick, sharp hand signal. Immediate path clear.
Okay.
Brock took a breath, gripping the sidearm Grolnak had unwittingly provided. Fleek, the console is on the far wall according to the pre-blackout schematic. Get in there, plug this in. He handed him the navigator. Bjorngir, you're Fleek's heavy escort. Nothing stops him. Lariel, you know what to do. Find an angle, cause chaos, then I'll draw their initial fire. Bjorngir gave a guttural grunt of confirmation.
On my mark,
Brock whispered, tensing as another volley of heavy fire erupted from within the office, followed by the defiant scream of the Dean's shield holding. Now! He burst through the ruined doorway, sidearm blazing, aiming high towards the pirates visibly firing on the Dean's position. Hey, over here, soft scale! He yelled, hoping the Gordic insult would draw their attention. Simultaneously, Bjorngir charged in low, a guttural roar ripping from his throat. shielding Fleek's smaller form as the Porthan sprinted desperately across the ravaged office towards the far console. L'Ariel vanished into the chaos the moment they breached, using overturned desks and a shattered holographic projector as cover. The office was carnage. What had once been a symbol of Orion elegance and academic authority, likely filled with priceless artifacts, polished metallic surfaces, and intricate holographic displays depicting Academy history, was now a wreck. Heavy furniture was overturned, transparasteel partitions shattered, data consoles sparking and spitting smoke. Scorch marks scarred the walls and the floor, and amidst the destruction, slumped against the far wall near the main console bank, was Dean Nuran Oubliette. He was grievously wounded, his ornate robes torn, metallic skin showing dull patches where energy bolts had impacted. But a shimmering golden shield flickered defiantly, absorbing the brunt of the incoming fire. The Dean's eyes, though dimmed by pain, flickered open wider as he saw Brock and Fleek burst through the ruined doorway. A spark of desperate hope ignited within their depths, warring with the agony that etched onto his strained features. "Hansen!" he gasped, the sound thin but urgent. His voice strained against the effort of maintaining the shield.
"The console. Fleek, protect the array."
His shield wavered violently under another energy blast from the guards, forcing his attention back to survival. Standing dominant near the center of the room, energy rifle still smoking, was Kerfix Gradageist. Flanked by 4 elite Whale-Tree guards in slightly heavier, more ornate armor, the Pirate Lord radiated pure menace. His scarred face, visible beneath the helmet's visor, twisted in a snarl of frustration as he registered the intruders. His attention momentarily torn from finishing the Dean.
"The human!"
Kerfix's harsh voice cut through the din, sharp with avarice and fury.
"Then Jackson's whelp. Kill the traitor. Capture this human alive. The rest are expendable."
The 2 guards immediately pivoted, unleashing a hail of energy fire towards Brock and Bjorngeir. Brock dove behind a massive overturned desk made of some dark, exotic wood, shots searing the air above him, splintering the fine material. Bjorngeir roared again, absorbing several hits on his already cracked armor plating, and returned fire. His heavier rifle forcing the guards to momentarily seek cover behind shattered statues. Fleek, spurred by the Dean's desperate plea, reached a QCOM console. A wide, sleek bank of interfaces integrated into the far wall. He slammed his palm onto its surface, anchoring himself, and fumbled for the schematic navigator. The console lights flared, recognizing the root authentication protocols, data streams scrolling across its main display at blinding speed. The 2 remaining elite guards flanking Kerfix moved to intercept Fleek. Bjorngeir bellowed, launching himself forward with the explosive force of a G-ball charge, intercepting one guard with a bone-jarring shoulder tackle that sent the pirate crashing into a flickering holographic map of the galaxy. The map display shattered, showering the area in harmless light particles. The other guard raised his rifle towards Fleek. Brock scanned the chaotic office desperately for an advantage. His eyes caught on the ornate ceiling high above the second guard. The room was already battered. Blaster fire had scorched the walls, and debris rained down intermittently. He noticed a section of heavy decorative molding directly above the guard, and that looked precarious. Perhaps loosened by a previous stray shot of the initial breach. Sparks spitting faintly from a damaged light fixture nearby. It was a long shot. Maybe just wishful thinking born of desperation. Worth a try. "Bjorngeir! Look out above!" Brock yelled. Less a precise instruction and more of a general warning, hoping to draw attention upwards. Simultaneously, Brock raised his sidearm and fired a quick shot at the already damaged connection point where the heavy molding met the main ceiling structure. The energy bolt struck the weakened joint. With a sharp crack and a groan of stressed material, the gamble paid off. The heavy, decorative beam tore loose from its moorings, showering sparks from the damaged fixture. It crashed down directly onto the unsuspecting guard just as he lined up a shot on Fleek, burying him under a cascade of ornate plaster and metal. Damn, Brock thought, relief flooding him after he scrambled for better cover. That actually worked. Kerfix snarled, finally turning his full attention from the battered Dean's shield, which sputtered erratically under the previous guard's assault. He raised his own heavy rifle, a customized weapon crackling with unstable energy. He fired a vicious burst directly at the Dean's chair. The golden shield flared brilliantly, absorbing the impacts, but buckled visibly, flickering wildly and threatening to collapse entirely. Seeing the shield falter and Fleek still exposed at the console, Kerfix adjusted his aim with predatory speed.
Insolent pests! You cannot stop what has already begun!
He leveled the rifle, no longer at the Dean, but at the frantically working Porthin. Brock saw it all in a split second. The Dean's shield nearly gone, the rifle swinging towards Fleek, the raw power crackling around Kerfix's weapon. No! There was no time to intercept, no time to warn. Pure instinct took over. He shoved himself off the floor, launching his body directly into the path of the incoming blast, shielding Fleek with his own frame. Agony, blinding, searing agony exploded through his left side. A horrific tearing sensation, followed instantly by the smell of burnt flesh, overwhelming his senses. He looked down, numb shock battling the rising tide of pain. His left arm was gone, severed cleanly just below the shoulder. The edges of the wound glowed cherry red, cauterized instantly by the sheer energy of Kerfix's weapon. Stars exploded behind his eyes. The world tilted, sounds fading into a roaring static. He crumpled to the floor, clutching the searing stump, a choked gasp tearing from his lungs.
My arm! My arm! Brock!
Fleek's terrified cry barely registered above the roaring in Brock's ears.
Hansen!
Bjorngir roared, fury incandescent. Seeing Brock fall, he abandoned suppressing the last guard and charged Kerfix like an avalanche. The fight became a desperate, close-quarters brawl. Bjorngir slammed into Kerfix, the sheer impact sending both massive gourds staggering back. They grappled fiercely amidst the wreckage, trading brutal blows that echoed like wrecking balls on concrete. Armor denting, sparks flying. Lariel flowed out from the shadows, her knife a silver blur, darting in to slash at Kerfix's exposed joints and coolant lines, forcing him constantly off balance. Her camouflage flickered as she weaved through the deadly dance. The last remaining elite guard tried to rejoin the fray, firing towards the grappling giants, shots going wide in the chaos. Brock lay on the floor, drifting in and out of consciousness, the metallic tang of his own blood thick in his mouth. Through waves of pain and dizziness, he saw Fleek, face pale with terror, but hands moving with renewed, frantic speed on the console, spurred by Brock's sacrifice.
He's almost there. Just gotta stay awake. Just gotta...
With a final, bellowing roar, Kerfix managed to throw Bjorngir off balance, sending the larger gourd crashing into a bank of sparking consoles. Simultaneously, he backhanded Lariel hard, sending her skittering across the floor. Temporarily free, breathing heavily, his cracked visor showing eyes burning with hate, Kerfix swung his rifle around. He aimed it directly at the slumped form of Dean Oubliette, whose shield had finally winked out of existence. No more obstructions.
Die, Orient filth!
Kerfix snarled, pulling the trigger for the kill shot. But the Dean wasn't helpless. As the energy bolt screamed towards him, his eyes snapped open, blazing with an impossible golden light. He didn't flinch, didn't try to evade. Instead, he thrust his hands forward, palm open towards the incoming blast. The intricate gold patterns etched deep into his metallic skin ignited, blazing with the light of a miniature sun. The very air crackled around him, warping with intense energy.
You cannot. You will not.
The Dean's voice resonated, no longer weak, but filled with ancient power, echoing slightly.
Kill me in any way that matters.
The energy bolt struck his outstretched hands, and stopped. It didn't dissipate. It was absorbed, drawn into the swirling golden vortex emanating from the Dean's body. For a heartbeat, the Dean glowed even brighter, a figure of pure, incandescent energy. Then, with a final, defiant cry that wasn't quite sound, but pure, resonant power, he unleashed it. A focused beam of blinding, golden-white energy, tinged with the raw, red fury of Kerfix's own captured shot, erupted from the Dean's hands, striking Kerfix's rifle dead center. The weapon disintegrated into a shower of molten slag and overloaded components. The beam continued, slamming into Kerfix's chest plate, sending the pirate lord flying backwards with a strangled cry of agony, crashing heavily into the far wall. Armor smoking, visibly burned and injured. The intense golden light surrounding the Dean faded instantly, leaving afterimages burned onto Brock's retinas. Dean Neuron Oubliette slumped forward, utterly still, his life force completely expended, his metallic skin dulling rapidly to a lifeless, lusterless pewter gray. He was gone, but his final act had turned the tide.
Shield down! Final lock bypassed!
Fleek shouted, seizing the momentary silence. He reached into the access port revealed by the schematic interface and physically ripped out the small crystalline whaled seed device. It sparked once in his grasp, then went dark.
Weld seed neutralized.
With his other hand, he slammed the final sequence onto the main console. A piercing, galaxy-wide carrier wave tone erupted from the room's speakers.
Confirmed. Broadcast transmitting galaxy-wide.
Kerfix stirred against the far wall, groaning, clutching his scorched chest plate, his primary weapon destroyed. He saw the confirmation light. He heard the rising whine of approaching sirens from the corridor. His plan was in ashes. His prize, Brock, wounded but alive. His ride potentially damaged. Rage and pain warred on his face. Bjorngir, recovering faster than the stunned guard, charged again. Lariel moved to flank. Brock, fighting through the agony, tried to raise his sidearm with his remaining hand. But Kerfix was already moving. He snarled, grabbing the nearest recovering elite guard. The guard looked up, confused, wounded.
Your failure is rewarded.
Kerfix roared, slapping a small magnetic charge onto the guard's chest plate. With a contemptuous shove, he kicked the doomed guard directly towards Bjorngir and Lariel.
Bomb!
Brock screamed, the warning tearing his throat. As Bjorngir reacted, trying to shield Lariel, Kerfix spun, his damaged FTL emitter sparking erratically. He slammed his fist onto the activator on his wrist gauntlet. The world dissolved into white noise and pressure as the guard exploded. Brock instinctively curled into a ball, the blast wave washing over him, showering him with debris. Through the ringing of his ears and the spots in his visions, he saw the faint, distorted shimmer of the Weld Tree FTL activating and vanishing just as the explosion ripped through the office. Kerfix Gradagast was gone, leaving behind death, destruction, and a spire that was finally, desperately calling for help. The ringing in Brock's ears slowly subsided, replaced by the rising whine of approaching sirens and the heavy, rhythmic thud of magnetic boots clanging against the deck plates outside the ruined office. Dust and smoke choked the air, stinging his eyes, mixing with the sharp, coppery tang of blood. His own, he realized dimly. The pain in his left shoulder was a roaring inferno, a blinding white heat that threatened to swallow his consciousness whole. He laid curled on the floor amidst the shattered furniture and sparking console fragments. His remaining hand instinctively clamped over the searing, cauterized stump where his arm had just been moments ago. Through blurred vision, he saw Bjorngir pushing himself up from where he'd just thrown himself bodily over Lariel before the explosion. The massive Gord's back armor plating was heavily scorched, cracked, and smoking from absorbing the brunt of the blast intended for both of them. He staggered slightly as he rose, shaking his massive head to clear it. Beneath him, Lariel pushed aside a piece of debris Bjorngir's body had shielded her from. Rising smoothly but breathing heavily, her usual cool mask replaced by a momentary look of raw shock as she glanced at Bjorngir's damaged back. Fleek was scrambling back towards the main QCOM console, checking its status, the precious schematic navigator still docked in its interface port. Then, the corridor outside filled with movement. Squads in heavy tactical armor flooded the doorway, weapons sweeping the room. But their disciplined advance was marred by exhaustion. Armor plates were scarred black by energy fire, dented from impacts, smeared with grime. One officer leaned heavily against the doorframe for a moment, catching their breath before pushing forward. Another limped slightly, favoring their left leg. They methodically cleared corners, checked behind overturned furniture, their movements precise, but lacking the sharp snap of troops fresh from deployment. One nudged a fallen whale tree pirate with their boot, checking for life signs with a weary professionalism that spoke of countless similar encounters across the Spire in the preceding hours.
Clear forward!
The lead officer snapped, their voice tight with fatigue, visor reflecting the chaotic lights.
Sweep the adjacent chambers. Any sign of the primary target?
The question implied Kerfix's expected presence, the uncertainty confirming they hadn't simply wiped the slate clean on their way up. These units had clearly broken through heavy resistance, likely capitalizing on the chaos caused by Fleek's signal and Kerfix's sudden disappearance. Medics in white and red tactical gear, their own armor bearing scorch marks and hasty field patches, rushed towards Brock, scanners whirring. They fought the encroaching darkness, trying to focus.
The schematic. Yes.
He forced out, his voice thick.
Fleek, give it. Oubliette.
More figures entered. Professor Oubliette, flanked by 2 security officers. His academy robes dust-stained, but his bearing radiating command. He strode directly to the dean's empty chair, knelt beside his brother's lifeless form, gently closing the dean's unseeing eyes. A single, shuddering breath. He placed a hand briefly on the dull metallic shoulder, a silent farewell. Rising, his expression etched with grief, but hardened by resolve, Oubliette surveyed the carnage. He saw the dead pirates, the disabled whaled Seed, the battered Bjorngir and Lariel, the critically injured Brock. He saw Fleek carefully extracting the schematic navigator.
Professor.
Fleek began, holding the device out, his hand trembling. Oubliette took the navigator, his gaze meeting Brock's across the room just as the medics prepared to move him.
Secured, Mr. Hansen.
Oubliette said, his voice clear and steady, acknowledging the state of the arriving troops.
Your signal turned the tide, broke their coordination.
Sector Command is pushing them back, level by level. He looked at the whole team.
You 4 held the heart when no one else could. You did well.
He turned to the security commander.
Establish a command post. Get casualty assessments. Get Mr. Hansen and the others to Med-Level Alpha, Priority 1.
Brock felt hands lifting him onto an anti-grav stretcher. The pain surged. He saw Bjorngir being checked, Lariel reporting quietly to Oubliette, Fleek pointing out console damage. The last thing he saw was Oubliette holding the schematic navigator, its blue light, a single source of comfort through their trek through the Spire, glinting.
Signal is how it is. The keys. Safe. I'll just take a little nap now.
Darkness took him. Days melted into a haze of pain management, bioscans, and nutrient drips in the sterile quiet of Med-Level Alpha, the Spire's most advanced medical facility. When Brock finally emerged from the fog, the sharp, phantom ache in his missing limb was a constant, unwelcome companion. He spent hours staring at the sleek, metallic plating where his left arm used to be. The biofoam sealant smooth and cold against his remaining shoulder. They told him the preliminary prosthetic fitting would begin soon, a marvel of Academy bioengineering, but the thought brought little comfort. The cost felt too real, etched into his very being. He received updates intermittently. The Spire was secure. The pirate fleet, caught off guard by the sudden galaxy-wide distress signal and the rapid mobilization of Alliance sector fleets, had scattered, suffering heavy losses during their chaotic retreat. Cleanup and repair operations were underway throughout the Spire, a monumental task. He heard snippets about his teammates. Fleek hailed as a tactical genius, Lariel vanishing back into enigmatic normalcy, Bjorngir under formal inquiry but cooperative, Feckerden recovering from his injuries back in the xenobotany labs, now secured. Professor Oubliette, now acting Dean Oubliette, visited once, briefly. His expression was weary but resolute. He thanked Brock quietly, assuring him that the schematic was secure under the highest protocols, and mentioned the Academy Council was processing the situation. Then he was gone, swept up in the immense task of leading the wounded institution. It was nearly a week later when Oubliette summoned Brock, Fleek, Lariel, and Bjorngir back into the scene of the climax, the Dean's office suite. The gaping hole where the door had been was sealed by temporary force fields. Repair drones hummed quietly, patching scorch marks and replacing shattered transparasteel panels, but the scars remained. Overturned furniture had been righted, debris cleared, but the ghost of the battle lingered in the air. The Dean's chair remained empty, silent testament to the sacrifice made there. Oubliette stood behind the massive desk, the schematic navigator resting on its surface beside a stack of data slates. He looked older, the intricate patterns on his face seemingly etched deeper by grief and responsibility. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice formal but carrying the weight of recent events. "There is much to discuss, much to process." He gestured through the data slates. The distress signal was received. Alliance Sector Command responded with overwhelming force once they bypassed the localized confusion Kerfix had sown. The Whaled 3 fleet is broken, scattered. Most have been apprehended or destroyed. A significant victory, secured by your actions here. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the 4 survivors standing before him. However, the primary target, Kerfix Gradagast himself, remains unaccounted for. He brought up a holographic star chart, highlighting a distant, unremarkable sector. Our long-range tracking arrays picked up his Whale Tree FTL signature, initiating an emergency jump from Spire orbit. The energy readings were erratic, unstable. He zoomed in on sector K78. His trajectory vector terminated prematurely here, deep in unclaimed space. But subsequent deep scan probes show nothing. The display flickered, showing sensor static. No ship signature, just lingering FTL interference, with the poorly turned engine sputtering out. He vanished. Oubliette met their eyes. We don't know where he went or how. He could be dead, lost in subspace, or he could have utilized some unknown aspect of Whale Tree technology to mask his true destination. Kerfix remains a dangerous loose end. He turned his attention first to Bjorngir. The massive gourd stood rigidly, awaiting judgment. Bjorngir Tjokson, Oubliette said, his tone measured. Your initial actions, under duress, placed the Spire in grave danger. A formal inquiry by the Gordic Consulate and the Academy Council is unavoidable. Bjorngir's spine ridges stiffened, but he said nothing. However, Oubliette continued, your subsequent bravery, your rejection of Kerfix's fanaticism, and your direct actions in defending this office were instrumental in preventing catastrophe. Testimony from Mr. Hansen and Coach Feckerton confirms the coercion involved regarding your mother, the Oracle. A matter the Alliance is now pursuing through diplomatic channels. The coercion will be given full weight in the inquiry. Your path forward, Oubliette stated firmly, lies in demonstrating unwavering loyalty to the principles this Academy represents, not the twisted honor Kerfix espoused. Your father chose this path. You chose yours in that control room. The Spire remembers that choice. Bjorngir gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, a flicker of relief warring with stoic pride in his eyes. Oubliette then looked at Lariel, who stood poised and watchful, revealing nothing. Miss Trinidad, your file lists extensive extracurricular activities in performance arts and social dynamics. A faint, knowing glint appeared in Oubliette's eyes. Yet reports detail unexpected talents in infiltration and close-quarters defense. He didn't press, didn't ask for explanation. These talents proved exceptionally useful. The Academy values diverse skills, applied appropriately. Lariel inclined her head slightly, a subtle acknowledgement, her expression unreadable. Finally, it turned to Fleek. Mr. Ivakadu, your technical expertise, your quick thinking under extreme pressure, and your ability to interface with both ancient and modern systems were nothing short of extraordinary. You successfully bypassed layers of unknown pirate security, disabled a sophisticated sabotage device, and initiated the signal that saved countless lives. The Academy's Applied Sciences Division already considers you a, as they put it, certified legend. Fleek shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his glasses, his ears flickering slightly. The closest he came to showing pleasure. Finally, Acting Dean Oubliette turned his gaze, softened slightly by a mixture of concern and profound respect, towards Brock. The human stood amongst them, looking paler than usual, the fatigue evident in his posture, his left arm ending in rather heavy medical wrapping or the dull gleam of a preliminary prosthetic. Mr. Hansen, Oubliette began, his voice lowering slightly, acknowledging the immense cost Brock has paid. Medical reports indicate that you are stable, though your recovery will be significant. He gestured almost imperceptibly towards Brock's missing arm. You paid a heavy price protecting Mr. Fleek, protecting the mission. He paused, letting the weight of the sacrifice settle in the quiet office. You arrived at this academy under circumstances not of your own choosing, burdened by a name that precedes you. Yet, when the Spire faced its darkest hour, you did not hesitate. You protected the schematic, the very key to our core systems. You led this unlikely team through impossible odds. You demonstrated resilience far beyond what we believed possible for your species, and tactical thinking that saved countless lives. Oubliette met Brock's eyes directly. My brother. His voice caught for a fraction of a second. Dean Oubliette. He saw potential in your ability beyond your family name, beyond your reputation. He believed you could be more. A faint, sad smile touched the acting dean's features. In this office, you honored the faith that he had more than words can express. Your actions, the actions of this entire team, he included Fleek, Lariel, and Bjorngir with the sweep of his gaze, have resonated far beyond these walls. The Spire, and perhaps the wider Alliance, owes you all a profound debt. Weeks later, the Sunspire cafe hummed with a nervous energy quite unlike its usual bustling confidence. Repairs were evident. Patched walls, replaced panels, sections still cordoned off. Security drones drifted more visibly between tables. The crowds were thinner, the conversations more subdued. But it was open. Life, scarred but resilient, continued. At a corner table, near Chef Umtol's usually bustling station, sat an unlikely quartet. Fleek sipped cautiously at a steaming mug of something vaguely resembling tea. Bjorngir sat stiffly, consuming a plate of nutrient paste. L'Ariel, surprisingly, was also present, observing the surroundings with her usual analytical gaze, though perhaps with a fraction less detachment than before. And Brock? He raised his own mug of coffee to his lips, the movement fluid, almost natural. Almost. He flexed the fingers of his left hand, watching the complex interplay of synth muscle fibers and polished metallic joints under the sleek, dark gray casing of his new prosthetic arm. It was a state-of-the-art preliminary model. Responsive, strong, far, far stronger than flesh, but undeniably other. A constant reminder of the cost etched onto his body for as long as he lives. Umtol caught his eye from the kitchen doorway, giving a solemn, respectful nod before turning back to his work. The shared experience, the survival, he had forged a quiet understanding. The silence at the table wasn't awkward, it's just heavy, filled with unspoken memories of the chaos, the desperate fight in the dean's office, the golden flash of sacrifice. They were survivors, bound by trauma and unlikely cooperation. Brock's personal device chimed softly on the table. A message notification. He glanced down, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly at the sender ID. Gabriel Hansen, his father. He stared at the notification for a long while, his jaw tightening slightly. He made no move to open it, the simple name conjuring a whirlwind of complex emotions. Resentment, duty, suspicion, and a grudging curiosity. Fleek noticed the shift in his expression. "Brock, everything okay?" Brock looked up from the device, meeting Fleek's concerned gaze, then glancing at Bjorngir's stoic profile and L'Ariel's watchful eyes. His team, his unlikely, damaged, but real team. He forced a slight smile, pocketing the device without reading the message. "Yeah," he said, the word feeling both true and false. "It's just dad stuff." He pushed the complex thoughts aside, focusing on the present, on the survivors, maybe even friends around him. He looked toward Umtol's kitchen. "So, anyone up for seeing if Umtol has perfected that sourdough yet?" The question hung in the air. Simple, normal. A small step back towards the life that they had had before the invasion, yet irrevocably changed. A new beginning, built on scars and shared survival.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode, and if you like the Sunspire series, there is more of it right here. Is this thing, are we still recording?